And welcome back to the Matt Stats Show, a show where we talk about statistics and its relevance into the sport of wrestling, among other things. I'm Jason Bryant, joined by Glenn Gormley and Kevin Hazard. As we learned last time, I believe we were the Ed and Johnny of wrestling podcasts. We haven't quite figured out. Ha ha, yes. As we're coming off a trip to Hall of Fame Honors Weekend and Final X, of course, our partner in crime, somebody that we all know very well, Mike Moyer, was inducted for the Order of Merit. Much of that induction is based on topics we've talked about in the last several episodes here on the show about the addition of programs on the men's and women's side. But before we get to today's topic, the renovation of Division I wrestling, which is my topic, and it's going to be a series that I'm going to be developing throughout this show and my main show, the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Glenn, let's start with you. Thoughts on the Honors Weekend this weekend in Stillwater, one of my favorite weekends in wrestling.
Yeah, it really was a great time. First of all, congratulations to Mike Moyer. Kevin and I bumped into him, and Coach Gable was talking to him. Coach Gable was singing Moyer's praises. So if Coach Gable sings your praises, you deserve to be in there.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, Kevin, I understand you had a little bit of a rough trip back. Glenn drove. I was back on the 620 flight where out of Stillwater, mind you. The airport in Stillwater is so gigantic, its cell phone waiting lot is one parking space. Dad jokes. But Glenn drove. Now, Kevin, you got hung up. It took you how long to get home?
About 14 hours.
And you were supposed to connect, and what, lightning hit the field? Is that what happened?
I got there, I got on the plane, and we went out on the tarmac, and he said, "I'm sorry, the lightning just hit the field. We have to wait." So it was 2 hours there. I missed my connector in Dallas. I got to Dallas. I get a text from American Airlines. They said, "Go to gate C9." I go to gate C9. They send me to St. Louis. But I give them credit for giving me a text. I got to St. Louis. I got off the plane. They gave me a text. Okay, go to gate C6. And I go there, and they give me a boarding pass. I had a 3-hour wait, but I had looked when I was sitting on the tarmac. I said, "I'm not going to be home till tomorrow." And I thought they did a great job. Now, this is a plug for American. They worked it all out. You didn't have to go stand in line. They worked it out, gave me 3 new boarding passes, and I got home. I was really happy, including getting my bag. They changed my airport of arrival, and my bag got there with me. So I think there's some pretty good, logistics going in within the airlines. I'm sure the computers have a lot to do with that.
And I typically don't fly American. Stillwater, the airport, Stillwater Regional, when you get off the plane, you walk off the plane, you walk into the airport, and there it is. The baggage claim is literally as big as my bar behind me. It's maybe 6 feet long. I mean, it's as big as a European hotel bed. That's how big the baggage claim is in Stillwater. And American flies into there. Typically, again, I don't typically fly American. I live in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities. So my hub is Delta. So this was a little change for me, but it was a pretty good experience. Now, today, actually, one of the things that we're talking about with Mike were the amount of programs added. Now, one of the things that people like to push back on is, well, what about Division I? What about Division I? Because, that's where everybody tends to focus the attention. It's the biggest tournament. It's the only tournament that draws. And as much as we talked about the attendance at Final X and Stillwater and such, it is, wrestling fans typically don't travel. So but there's the focus on all the teams we're adding in the NAI, Division II and Division III and such, and on the women's side. But, always the pushback on where's Division I? Where's Division I? Well, today I am focusing on the renovation of Division I wrestling, and this is the first part of it. We'll bring it up on screen. So I've had this idea for a number of years, but I first sent this out a couple months ago, as you can see on the screen. For those of you that are watching, if you're not watching and you're listening back on this PDF will be available at the Mad Talk Podcast Networks at madtalkonline.com, as well as the NWCA site where you normally watch the video here. But, talked about all what we need to do to fix Division I wrestling. We need to fix Division I wrestling. So I'm going to start by saying this. One, I do not agree that Division I's model should go to a regional format like Division II and Division III does. Why? It's a completely different setup. There are 32 all sports conferences, whereas in Division II and Division III, they're not as set in their ways on their divisional or their conference structure, because there's less rights fees and things of that nature when it comes to streaming, if there are even rights fees or for television and streaming at all. So part of this, I call it renovation. It's not a revolution. It's just we're moving the deck chairs around to make sure that they fit the space better. And again, I'm not a fan of the regional format for Division I wrestling. The reason I say that is, and this is going to be a topic within the show, is without conference affiliation, you give athletic directors or presidents or people that don't want a sport another excuse to get rid of it, because we can say, oh, well, our conference doesn't sponsor it. So what I want to do is I want to fix that excuse right now and give us a more level playing field, so to speak, when it comes to our team. So moving to that point, our overview here, again, heading into 2023. Actually, I needed to update this. There'll be 81 active programs.
There's 81 now, yep.
Yeah, because actually 23-24 Morgan State will be coming on board. So it'll be 80 by the time this thing rolls. And our current conference structure, this will be more geographic. Because right now we have situations with affiliates where Little Rock, which is in Arkansas, is in the Pac-12. We have a unique situation where we have Division II schools in the Mid-American Conference with the Pennsylvania State Athletic Schools, the four conference schools that we have there. And then we have a Division III school, the only one in the country with a Division I wrestling team, Franklin Marshall, in the oldest wrestling conference in the country, the EIWA. So we go over that. So to our models, we have 32 all-sports conferences in Division I. They are collections of conferences and universities that are typically geared as like-minded peer institutions aligned by geography, size, and student demographics. For example, demographic, the MEAC and the Southwestern, the Southwest Athletic Conference, the SWAC and the MEAC, they are considered the HBCU conferences because all their membership are HBCUs, with the exception, like in Division II, like Chowan is in the CIAA, which is a traditional HBCU conference. So again, there's the demographic thing. We know the Power Five, if you're a college sports fan at all, the ACC, the Pac-12, the SEC, the Big Ten, that group, the SEC, they are the Power Five. They're the ones with the money, and you know what? They're the ones who call the shots, especially when it comes to football and basketball. So while we talk about everything we want to do as a sport, we are not beholden to our own destiny in a lot of ways. And this is one thing where I think this could help us if we push our conferences in that regard, because right now, as we speak on this in June of 2022, the NCAA Transformation Committee is looking on what's going to happen with college sports, specifically Division I, and then that's where all one domino falls, the rest are going to follow. So wherever Division I goes, the rest of the NCAA sporting world is going to follow, and wherever football and basketball goes, the non-revenue sports, the Olympic sports, they have to follow. That's what's happened. That's the facts of the matter. Chasing the money, again, we talked about rights fees and such. So we talk about basketball units. Well, 5 sports make money on their championships. Of course, March Madness, men's basketball, the men's portion of March Madness, that is where the big money comes from. The NCAA does not actually hold a 1A or a FBS national championship. The college football playoff is not an NCAA championship, contrary to what it may be termed to people. So when they hold up that trophy, that is not an NCAA trophy. That does not say NCAA on it. So the NCAA Division I football champion actually is North Dakota State typically, because they are the NCAA football championship subdivision. So the non-revenue sports, the Olympic sports, some of you that are unfamiliar with this, there's a lot of more stuff out there that you can learn from than me. I'm going to just give you a glancing overview of what we've got. So as we understand, that's the problem. So how is going to a smaller conference structure going to be more beneficial for every wrestling program? So this is basically, the soup to nuts on what I'm trying to get to. So first of all, before we get into the discussion, first I'll start with Kevin. What do you think the biggest issue is with our conference alignments in Division I wrestling?
Well, you think the first thing I think of is West Virginia being in the Big 12, and every other school is on the other side of the Mississippi. So the distance for that is that's a really hard thing, and so that was the main thing that strikes out at me, and I kind of like what we've been doing over the last couple of years, more than not liking it, where we get where they now have to wrestle a tougher schedule to get the seeding to go to the nationals, which I like.
Glenn, thoughts on where we're going with
Yeah.
this discussions? Before we're not giving anything away yet, but as you come in and say you haven't seen this before, what are your thoughts on the general alignment of Division One wrestling and how we do it?
My thoughts on this, given what you're saying, Jason, is the NCAA, the 32 conferences that we talked about, Division One, are based a lot on football and basketball and not on the smaller sports like wrestling. Okay. And I think that hurts it. And I really am a fan of having more and smaller conferences than fewer and big ones. And I think this could help a dual meet title for the conference, etc. Um, because right now with the huge conferences, the Big Ten doesn't wrestle 13 dual meets against each other. So no reason to think the EIWA would wrestle 16. Since there's 17 teams there. So I'm all for the thought of seeing what other people want with this. And I like what you've done with this, Jason. You did a lot of hard work with this, and I'm a big fan of this.
All right, so moving forward again, the 32 all sports conferences. So typically, you've got anywhere from 16 to 24 sports sponsored by each conference. I think the West Coast Conference doesn't sponsor football, but they have 15 sponsored sports. Typically, the breakdown is, if I could run an average, let me just run an average real quick. Let me just drag this. The sum of all the sports, the average is approximately... Okay, looks like the average is 20 sports with, the Ivy League sponsors 32. That's a bit, that kind of skews it a little bit. But usually you're looking at 18 sports, and they're usually broken up where you usually have 8 men, 10 women, or 10 and 12, or especially if football is sponsored, because, of course, we know to offset the gender equity numbers, you typically will see more women's sports than men's sports when you have a football program. So, and there's, again, we've said there's 32 of them, and we have 6 that sponsor wrestling, and then a 7th, the EIWA, which is one of let's see if I can read the card. 27 single sport conferences. We have Water Polo Association. We have college swimming conferences. We have rifle and rodeo conferences and things of that nature. So as we move forward, so just giving you again a little overview that each sport has its own problems, and there are ways they qualify. So. Moving into it now, the next slide is we're going to go the current structure, which most everybody knows. So we've got our conference makeup with our legacy schools. The ACCT has 15 members with 6 sponsoring. The Big Ten has 14 and 14. We all know that. The Big 12 has 12 members with 4 legacy schools sponsoring, with California Baptist coming in as an affiliate next season. The Pac-12, as the name indicates, has 12 members with 3 all-sports members sponsoring. The Mid-American Conference is 12 and 5. The Southern Conference with 10 and 3. As we noted earlier, Morgan State will be coming in. They're an all-sports member of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, the MEAC. They'll be coming in 23-24. Oklahoma, as we know, is leaving the Big 12 to go to the SEC. That could happen as early as 2023. And Queen's University of Charlotte, which we had actually talked about prior to recording the show, they were rumored about moving up. They did announce a move to Division I on May 6th. That being said, our next thing is we have one single sport conference, as we know, the Eastern Intercollegiate Wrestling Association, founded around the turn of the century with 17 member institutions. So one of the big keys to this is affiliate or associate membership. The word has been used interchangeably. So as we look at the makeup on the screen, and if you're not, I'll be reading this as well. The ACC has 0 affiliate members in wrestling. So does the Big Ten. The Big 12 has 9 of its soon-to-be 13 teams as affiliates. The MAC has 8 of its 13 as affiliates. Half of the Pac-12, 6 teams are affiliates, and 6 of the 9. So that is very affiliate-heavy, and I know Glenn's going to bring in some stats about affiliates when we get to that point. So we are really an affiliate sport. And Glenn, what have you learned about how affiliates are in the sporting world here?
Well, what I've learned is exactly what you're showing here, Jason, is this sport and other sports are really affiliate heavy. I mean, you got conferences like the Big 12. The only sports that they have right now that have all the basketball and football. Everything else this just has their 12 primary members. Everything else is affiliate oriented. Of the 32 conferences there are, okay, there's 5 conferences that do not have affiliate members in anything. The Ivies, the SWAC, the SEC, etc. However, all of those conferences, the ones we mentioned, like for example, Tennessee's women rowing is a part of the Big 12. So everything is just in flux except for basically football and basketball. And here's one of the wildest stats I've discovered here. Of all the 32 conferences there are, only one conference has not had additions or subtractions in the last 10 years of members. Only the Ivy League.
And as you might expect, because of the Ivies, what are the Ivies? That's it. They're the 8, and that's all they're ever going to be, and that's all they're going to be. So everyone else, 31 out of 32, has had some type of membership move in the last decade.
Yeah, in the last decade. So I think a lot of people think that conferences are married to their members. They're not, as in other sports. So I think we explore here and see what other coaches and ADs and all think about upsetting the apple cart here to benefit the sport.
I've got a question, quick question. There has been in the last 10 years, why do you think there has been so much change? It seems, I'm sure it's all tied to money.
That's the answer. You answered your own question. It's all tied to money. Everybody wants those they want those units. They want to get into bigger they want to get a better basketball conference so they can get more bids to nationals, so they can get those extra units. So if you play in the NCAA tournament, you get 1 unit. You get an additional unit for each round you advance. So, for example, St. Peter's, they made that really big run this year in men's basketball. Well, that got X amount of units for the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. So that whole conference benefits from them getting further in the tournament. So that's why you say, oh, we want more at-large bids. You see it in wrestling too. We do that on our own. Like we're trying to get, we like this because we want to be in this conference to get more bids. It's the same basic logic applies, only the golden egg at the end of it for wrestling is more bids to the tournament, where in basketball it's more money, and it's a lot of money.
Yeah, a great example of this is, Kevin, is Oklahoma Sooners. Their football thing's been going great since we've all been alive. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, they dumped the Big 12 for the SEC. It's about money.
And guess who gets drug along for the ride? It's every other sport. So basically, it's football. It's football with the television rights, and it's men's basketball with the units for the men's version of men's side of the Final Four. So
a big wrestling power. Oklahoma is now going to be a conference that doesn't have the sport.
Yeah, we'll get to that too here in a bit. So. Again, Olympic sports don't dictate conference alignment. Wrestling people, we need to understand we don't dictate what the money sports do. We know that, but we have to understand, we have to come to the realization we are who we are. We can control what we can control, but we also make ourselves a little bit more attractive to the things that we can't control. Be like, because if we're, this is where we have to do something, be like, well, this is why it's important. We talked about the conference affiliation. I alluded to this earlier. Why I don't like the regionals is like when Old Dominion dropped wrestling, one of the reasons that they put up was Conference USA didn't sponsor wrestling. Now, let's also look at, now they're in the Sun Belt, which also doesn't cover wrestling. Oddly enough, they left the Sun Belt in 1992. So 30 years later, they're back in the Sun Belt chasing football money. They're in a better baseball conference. Basketball leaves, a little bit to be desired. Conference USA wasn't be good, but, so they're all looking at, in travel was crazy because, the Conference USA got so out of hand with this conference realignment where UTEP, which is on the Mexican border in El Paso, Texas, was in the same conference with a school on the Atlantic coast, like literally on the beach, 15 miles from the beach with that school in Norfolk. So again, what I'm trying to get is wrestling. We don't need that. And costs were crazy. I think I saw a report about West Virginia's women's soccer travel costs are X amount. And it's like, well, that's not because of women's soccer. It's because football and basketball put them in a conference where all the other Olympic sports, non-revenue sports, now have to follow that schedule model. It's like, it doesn't make sense. One thing that's another topic entirely is the transformational committee is if you want these sports conference cultures, just leave them for the money sports and let the Olympic and non-revenue sports go to a regional model. This is part of that potential thing. So moving forward, what do I think our solutions could be? The goal here is to create more conferences, and we provide schools fair and equitable automatic qualifying standards while aligning schools with similar budgets and institutional profiles. The benefits: smaller, consistent dual meet schedules. Look at the ACC. Yeah, 6 teams. They have a nice, compact conference dual meet schedule that's Friday night on ESPN, streaming ESPN Plus, the ACC network. It creates them flexibility in going to tournaments and getting those non-conference dual meets at an Oklahoma State, or they can go to an Iowa. They can go up north to wrestle the schools in the Ivy League or the EIWA. It also creates scheduling of home events in those smaller conferences that can entice growth. Like I said, the streaming audience. Friday night duels on the ACC network and ESPNU have been great because you do the doubleheader. Then I go watch the Big Ten network. It's been fantastic. It also creates conference tournament structures that can aid coaches in promoting the entire season and aiming for a clear conference dual meet champion and a conference championship that is relevant to the institution. So, a lot of these schools don't get bonuses because it's like, oh, you win a conference championship. Well, it's not a sponsored sport in our conference. So this also gives us the opportunity to put conference tournament weekends to make them a better draw at the small, a 1-day event versus a 2-day event. 6 teams is the minimum you need for an automatic qualifier. Also, for me, looking at the smaller programs, I look at the disparity between schools in the EIWA top and bottom. You look at the disparity between the type of programs in the Big 12s and affiliates. Now, I go to North Dakota State. It is not a poorly funded school by any stretch of the imagination, but the facilities at North Dakota State, as good as they are for a football championship subdivision team in a mid-major, air quotes, I hate that term, but that's what we call them, compared to what we saw at Oklahoma State this past weekend, it's night and day. The budgets for these schools are night and day. The budgets we have just for wrestling are night and day. The Power 5 schools can invest more, even in their non-revenue sports that they don't care about, again, air quotes, than a school that really wants to go all in on wrestling. Like a Northern Iowa is really big on wrestling. North Dakota State does a really good job at putting wrestling. But those schools don't have a lot in common in terms of their funding and such. So we need to put them with like institutions. California Baptist, for example, as going into the affiliate as a Big 12. That to me it makes me scratch my head a little bit. So this is going to take care of that type of situation. Now, it's not perfect because geography, once you get west of the Mississippi, outside of the Power 5 structure, does create a bit of a problem. Like most wrestling people, we're going to say, well, what about? Right, Glenn? We're all about problems, not about solutions, right? Well, no, we can't do this. Kevin, you've been around. Well, actually, you have too, Glenn. You guys have been around long enough to hear the excuse. You've probably even said it at times. Well, this is the way we've always done it. That's going to be disrupted here.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, I'll start with you on this because of you gentlemen who are a little longer in the tooth than I have and have been around the sport coaching a lot longer than I've been alive. And that's not an age joke, but it's just the facts. That the mentality of the way we've always done it, that doesn't really get us very far if we don't think about innovation and change. So, Kevin, in your career, when did you become somebody that goes, we need to change versus like, well, that's not the way we've always done it?
I'm in an industry that's also very traditional. So I hear that all the time, the way we've always done it. I'm in construction. And so I've always felt that if you're not innovating and you're not changing, you're going to get further and further behind. So I'm always been big on, figure out the best way to do it. And if you got to break the box, break the box.
Glenn, as a guy that's been into numbers and stats and somebody who's owned businesses and such, same question. If you're running a restaurant, say, let's go back to running the Greenleaf. If we're always going to sell this beer for this price, or we're always going to sell this sandwich for this price. You live or you die, right? You survive or you adapt.
Jason, I'll give you a great example of that. Right when I got out of grad school and bought the Leaf, I came up with this idea to do craft beers, in a town that has an Anheuser-Busch brewery. So people thought I was nuts, but I was just happened to be fortunate to be on the cutting edge of that, and it changed everything in that area.
I didn't even think about that. As many times as I've been to the Greenleaf, I didn't realize, Anheuser-Busch shadows were literally cast over the Greenleaf. Wow.
Yeah, the Clydesdales were literally right there, right?
yeah, they just weren't in your parking lot because your parking lot sucked.
Exactly, because the parking lot wasn't big enough to fit the 8 Clydesdales.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example, like you said about how big things are west of the Mississippi. I just drove, this weekend after seeing Moyer and all the other inductees. Congratulations to all of them. From Stillwater to Rocky Top. It took me 14 hours. Well, when I coached that school in Williamsburg, we used to, wrestle that school in Norfolk. They were an hour apart. And then Richmond had two teams, Richmond and VCU. So it was a lot easier. And now these conferences are so big that it's really difficult to travel. And it escalates the budgets, like you and Kevin talked about West Virginia's volleyball budget and all that stuff. So I really think, Jason, you're onto something here. We're going to get resistance from people. And you know what? I got a lot of resistance from a lot bigger people than any wrestler is, including a Clydesdale, and made it work.
Another point, this doesn't eliminate the issues we have with our season, its structure. We want to be, we need to move our tournament, but this doesn't change any of that. This is not about, that's going to be another part of my renovation series.
And think about this too, Jason and Kevin. If we expand the number of conferences, this is more coaches that come back and say, I won my conference. It's more wrestlers to say, I won my situation. It's a lot easier for the parents to watch it than it is you really have to be a wrestling fan to watch 3 days of the NCAA tournament and be there every session. Fortunately, Jason and Brian Hauser do a really good job announcing it so more people can follow. But these smaller tournaments will help the fan.
I agree. Now, another thing, this is also a hurdle here, is this projected realignment involves Power 5 conferences working together. And if you've paid attention to college sports, the Big Ten commissioner, the ACC commissioner, the Pac-12 commissioner, all the Power 5, they don't always get along. They don't always see eye to eye, and they always want what's best for them. Look at how hard is it to get a college football playoff that's expanded and equitable for access for these schools. So that's the one thing. It's like, no, we don't want to have, miss class time, blah, blah, blah. Oh, we can't travel there. Where's the money? They won't get along about the big things. Maybe this is such a little thing for them. Maybe the possible point, counterpoint to this is, well, they don't care enough to invest the time to fight it. So why don't they just let it go? And then finally, this is something that I think we get probably more in the Big 12 is the perceived brand awareness based on the success of other sports. The Big 12, yes, has a good wrestling tradition, but the Big 12 is, soon it's there's 4 schools and 3 of them are longtime Big 12 members, soon to be 2 when Oklahoma leaves. That's just going to leave Iowa State and Oklahoma State in the Big 12 that were that old school Big 12 era. So it's basically just a logo on the back of your singlet and, qualifying bids based on the strength of those power programs. So I feel like the Big 12 is good for recruiting. Yeah. The Power 5 name is good. The Pac-12 is good for recruiting. Okay. What really? Getting guys to nationals, I think the kids that are going to wrestle Division I, pay attention to the teams that wrestle Division I. I don't think you're going to lure anybody just because of the logo that's on the back of the singlet. Air Force has a Big 12 logo on the back. Bad example, their Service Academy. But like Utah Valley, we're in a Big 12 for wrestling. Okay. Is that going to help you steal a kid over the Bakersfield, which is in the Pac-12 for wrestling? I mean, I feel like that is an argument that I don't feel like holds a lot of weight. So it's not a real huge talking point. I just feel like that's something that comes up from time to time. That's, what it is. Additional hurdles. We're currently at a moratorium on single sport conferences. The last I've heard, I've been waiting to get that confirmed. I know that what I mean is we cannot create a new wrestling only conference that is divisional wide or NCAA organizational wide. So you can't just, let's just split these conferences up and create, this wrestling conference like the EWL. We cannot create a new EWL right now. Keep that in mind because the conferences I'm going to be using for our realignment and renovation are existing conferences. So that's kind of key to this. Affiliate memberships. While we want to decrease the volume of affiliates per conference, affiliate membership is pivotal to this plan. So you're going to need the affiliates. The worry also is adds and drops because if you need 6 for as I'm going to say, it's an AQ, an automatic qualifier, adds and drops in college sports are inevitable. Whether we want to like it, there are going to be schools that drop wrestling. There are going to be schools that add wrestling. This creates a little bit more leeway with the ebb and flow, but we're not just cramming new teams into the existing 7-conference structure when we know, actually, let's just call it 5-conference structure because 2 of them don't even take affiliates. And now the qualifying process. This doesn't create a big problem with the qualifier, in my opinion, because the system as we've developed it since I want to say the the 2007 convention where it came out. We put it into practice during the 8-9 season. I think it was the 8-9 season. And because we were developing it when I was at the NWCA, the 08, and then 08-09 was when we put it into place. And conference qualifiers. Well, your champ goes, and then you've got the bids, and you can have that scheduling, that freedom to go. You need to get your D1 matches. This creates a little bit more flexibility because you're not. Well, I can't go wrestle them because they're in our conference. Well, now you've broken the conferences up further to where we can wrestle them. It's a D1 countable match, and ultimately the smaller conferences give those schools. And the smaller schools and more like-minded conferences a better access point. Win your conference, you're in. It's that simple, okay? Then you can put the rest up for debate when we get to the at-large situation. So, that being said, how do we identify which conferences to sponsor wrestling? As we said, we know we've got the 6 conferences that are Division I, 6 of the 32. Think about how depressing that is to think about. Only 6 of the 32 all-sports conferences actually sponsor wrestling. Here to change that. The Ivy sponsors wrestling, but they don't have a championship in it. It's not an auto qualifier. They are within the EIWA. In this model, only the Big Ten will not change. So I know our EIWA folks are probably going to be like, whoa, what do you mean? Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of wrestling heresy moving forward here. So the only thing that does not change is the Big Ten because they have all 14 teams that sponsor. So where do we begin? Let's look around the world of college sports. So in Division II, the South Atlantic Conference and the Conference Carolinas, they co-opted to create a conference for men's wrestling and field hockey, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a women's sport. So they actually have the teams in those conferences came together, and it's a branded the same. So wrestling they have a conference dual meet schedule. They have a conference dual champion. They're part of a regional, but they have created a scheduling co-op and a conference co-op. In FCS, Football Championship Subdivision, the Big South and Ohio Valley Conference have announced a scheduling relationship. So they're really small with their football membership, but they say, okay, we're going to schedule these 2 conferences together. They created a relationship. If we can use those as, kind of like our precedent, maybe what's to stop and say, well, why not you come together for a sport? So I believe this is the way we can go down to, 1, create automatic qualifying conferences, but also down the line, create the opportunity for more Division I schools to be that are maybe in the market for wrestling. Oh, well, we're part of this co-op conference. Well, there's now teams that we can look at, and this will be another part of my show is when we want to get to 100 Division I teams, what our target should be. So that's later. So where are we going, Glenn? Where are we going? So on screen. Right now, we know the Patriot League has 5 wrestling members. They are American, Army West Point, Bucknell, Lehigh, and Navy. And now before you say, wait, Army is in this for this is not football. This is their all-sports conference. 5, they're 1 team away from being an auto qualifier. What's the solution? Well, they need an affiliate. Who is the most logical affiliate? You look around the EIWA, Franklin and Marshall. Why is Franklin and Marshall the most rational affiliate? That's kind of an open-ended question, so I'll start with you, Glenn. Why do you think Franklin and Marshall would be a logical Patriot League affiliate for them to start wrestling?
Geographically and academically.
Absolutely, and that is the plan here. So I also look to see, does the Patriot League have any affiliate members? Why, yes, the Patriot League does. They have affiliate memberships. They
have 4 different affiliates.
Yeah, they have football, golf, and rowing. They also have a Division III school that is an affiliate. So Franklin and Marshall being a Division III school is not a precedent. MIT is in rowing. So there's a logical fit. 6-team auto qualifier, academic, because Bucknell wrestles F&M repeat. I announced F&M Bucknell duels when I lived in Lancaster. The second conference I get to is a little bit more dicey because I don't believe this is probably one of my weakest arguments here is the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference, Division II conference with 4 of their members having wrestling. And this, I took a little bit of a sigh of relief when the news came out that all of these schools, because there's going to be some consolidation with the university systems, but they're all going to keep their athletics programs with their name and branding. So Bloomsburg, Clarion, Edinburgh, and Lock Haven are the 4. So what do we do? Well, I'm going to think, okay, George Mason and Morgan State. Geographically, they're Virginia. This is probably the one I'm like, okay, is because we don't have we don't have a single sports conference. I think this may be a logical place to create a conference where, hey, the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference could you sponsor a Division I conference? Could you sponsor a Division I sport? You've got Division II schools. You sponsor the sport in wrestling at the Division II level. Could you potentially do kind of the same thing? So that's the one I'm not 100% like sold on. But
Jason, what's interesting about the PSAC, some time ago, they had an affiliate member just for football, CW Post. Okay, so they have done this before. I mean, they're not doing it currently, the PSAC, but they do have a track record of doing it. Okay, and it was a school that was not in Pennsylvania, as obviously Morgan State and George Mason are not either. So there is precedent there.
Yeah, and takes five of the last teams in the EWL and kind of puts them back. If we could put the EWL stamp on it, I would have done that. The next is the Mid-American Conference, where you have the 5 all-sports members: Buffalo, Central Michigan, Kent State, Northern Illinois, and Ohio with wrestling. Cleveland State geographically plants right in there. They're already an affiliate in wrestling. I feel like this is an easy slam dunk.
Yeah, and the MAC is the king of affiliate members. The MAC has 23 different affiliate schools for different sports. I mean, and they have 12 primary, so almost 2 times as many affiliates as they have primary members. Mm-hmm. So the MAC can't say, wait, we don't want Cleveland State since they already have them in other sports.
Yeah, and then looking at the numbers of affiliates, the MAC, I think I came up with 21, but the next highest conference with affiliates is actually the other MAC. It's the MAC, the Metro Atlantic, which in a later episode I'm going to talk about why that whole conference should add wrestling, because most of those schools are private. They don't have football, and boom, there you go. That's the thing. So next, the Southern Conference. This one's going to be interesting because you look at the SoCon. Okay, who's out there? Okay, so Chattanooga, the Citadel, and VMI are all sports members for wrestling. So App State is in the Sun Belt. Bellarmine is in they're in the A-Sun. Davidson's in the Atlantic Sun, and Queens is going to join the A-Sun as well. So the SoCon of those conferences is the conference that has the most full members with it. So that's why I put the SoCon label on it. The SoCon has also been very open to affiliates. So I feel like this creates a Southern style conference that's not much different than what they have now. So Chattanooga, the Citadel, VMI would join App State, Bellarmine, Davidson, and Queens of Charlotte. So the only thing that happens is we lose some of those, the SoCon affiliates to what's going to be the Big South Ohio Valley scheduling conference.
Let me interject a point on the Southern Conference. Kevin Hazard, what conference was William Mary in when you wrestled?
Southern Conference.
Can you think of a school that should start wrestling and join the Southern Conference right now?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking, and not a whole lot earlier than I was there, the Southern Conference was huge.
West Virginia used to be in the Southern Conference.
Well, the Virginia Tech.
East Carolina.
It was just this enormous conference.
Got a lot of history there, too.
A lot of history there.
So what's going to happen? The 3 schools that were left, Campbell, Gardner, Webb, and Presbyterian that are in the SoCon now, well, they're in the Big South. That would join the Ohio Valley because Lindenwood just moved to Division I or in the process of moving to. Little Rock would move. They're in the Ohio Valley. They're moving from the Sun Belt. They're non-football members, so they're moving into the Ohio Valley Conference. And then SIU Edwardsville is in the Ohio Valley Conference already. So there's 3 there, and then there's 3 in the Big South to follow that football scheduling model. Then there you have a 16 qualifier, and geographically, it's a little bit spread, but it's also it's there. These teams they will know each other. You've got the Southern core, and then you've got the South Central part of the country as a core there. So that's one that I thought was just kind of, once Lindenwood moved up, I'm like, well, there's 6 right there, and they've already got the football scheduling agreement. Next, I was waffling on which conference to go with here. I was initially going to say the Colonial, which no longer sponsored wrestling after 2013 because of what happened with Mason left, Old Dominion left. That was the death knell for the conference wrestling because it was mostly affiliates. That left Drexel and Hofstra as the last 2 full members with wrestling. But in looking at this, Long Island University, which merged with what used to be CW Post, that became LIU Post, and now they're one at Division I athletic department as Long Island University. They're in the Northeast Conference, as is Sacred Heart. So there's two Northeast Conference teams. Now, the reason I use the CAA in this model is because Ryder and Binghamton were both part of CAA wrestling. So there's not a whole lot of stretch here to kind of rebrand CAA wrestling and have four of their last members in there, adding Long Island and Sacred Heart to each other. And geographically, it fits in the footprint. And again, this is where I hate to use Long Island University in a negative situation here, but right now, there are 17 teams in the EIWA. As it stands, I don't know when Long Island University is going to get a qualifier out of that 17-team conference. Now, this is not intended to say, well, you're making it easier for those schools. No, I'm giving them a better chance to compete with schools that are geographically, financially, and competitively, they're equal. So, the Ivies, like the Cornells, the Princetons, the Penns, while they don't have scholarships, they're better funded. So it's good. I mean, you don't unseat them. You don't unseat them as easily as you're looking around. Hofstra and LIU, there's a local rivalry right there waiting to happen. Drexel and Bing. I mean, these schools, they have histories with each other going way, way back. So, you might have to create some new rivalries here. But again, most of these teams are scheduling each other in other sports. So the CAA, and the reason I like the Northeast Conference is they've never actually sponsored the sport. So that's one thing that's like enticing to me. It's like, oh, can we get another one in there? So, but the CAA does have a wrestling history. They've been, their conference is also in flux in terms of where we're going with membership. Moving on to the next group.
The CAA has been in such flux because of football teams coming and going. I mean, they have 11 affiliate members right now, the CAA, and, it depends on what day, who's in it in football and who's not. That's total, yeah.
So now we go to the Ivy League. So, yep, Ivy's they've got 6. They've got it. They've got enough ready for an AQ. They already doing all Ivy team. This is the easiest one because you don't have to add any affiliates. That's the 6 Ivy. All you got to do is get Yale and Dartmouth to bring their programs back, and you get a full squad. So those are the automatic qualifying systems from what I've got. Now, the hard part of what's left. Okay, I've already broken up the EIWA. I know some of you have checked out on that. The West, and this is where we need more programs, but you're really limited because as we look, and I'm using the Mountain West, but we also have the Big West and the WAC as conferences out there with these teams. And yes, I am pulling the Pac-12 out. Let's just jump to that instead. And I talked about like-minded. The Power 5 leftovers, because Missouri and Oklahoma are going to be in the SEC. You got Arizona State, Oregon State, Stanford in the Pac-12. You got West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma State in the Big 12. The fight there is whose banner is on the trophy. So I say you create. Now, West Virginia, I've pulled out of this example and put with the ACC, which is, I'll explain that in a moment. But if you put the Power 5 schools that are left over in those 3 conferences, you have a really good wrestling conference with schools that are funded very similarly and similar resources and not going to have an issue with their budgets and travel and such. And people are going to want to come to them. They're not going to have a problem getting matches. So what the name, and I understand a couple years ago, before the Big 12 absorbed all of those affiliates from the old Western Wrestling Conference, West Region, there was talk about the Pac-12 and Big 12 merging. There was talk about the ACC and the Big 12 coming together for wrestling. One of the points was whose name's on the banner. So basically, if you can get through the collective pissing contest that's going to be, I feel like even you keep West Virginia in this scenario, you have a really good wrestling conference with really funded teams that makes more sense than wrestling a North Dakota State, a South Dakota State, or a Northern Colorado. Those schools have history with each other, for example. So Air Force, Northern Colorado, Northern Iowa, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Wyoming, that old Western Wrestling Conference, well, you create a 2-divisional conference within, whether it be under the Mountain West banner, the WAC, or the Big West, whoever wants to put that scheduling together. I don't know if we reach out to the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation, which is an all-sports, like Olympic sports conference. That's another thing I didn't really want to get into because that's, again, not part of this whole scenario. So we got the Cal Poly, Cal Baptist, CSU, Bakersfield, Utah Valley in one half, and then you've got the other, and then there's your scheduling thing. You get your California trips, your qualifying teams. I mean, all the schools are relatively funded, likely, and they're in those same time zones. I mean, it's going to cross 3 time zones just because that's the problem with the West. Is again, some people out east. Well, why can't you put them all together? Well, it's not an easy trip. Wyoming to Fargo is not close. It's a long trip. I mean, we're talking geographically. Yeah. Those are some big swaths of land. Now the ACC. No affiliates in anything else. I think from a geographical situation, West Virginia makes more sense. They're right there next to Pittsburgh. But the ACC doesn't have affiliates. But there are schools in the ACC that are affiliates in other Power 5 conferences. Notre Dame is an independent in football. We know that. But they're an ACC school in everything except football and ice hockey. Guess what? They're in the Big Ten for ice hockey. So there is a situation. We've got a little bit of a precedent to like Power 5 teams, conferences maybe sharing their membership. Now, again, this also is key. If the Big 12 takes the banner off of wrestling, well, then West Virginia could be free to go where they need to as an affiliate. Would they stay in this Power 5 group, which I think travel would make not a whole lot of sense, or go with the ACC? I want to bring up the craziest conference that I've seen in Division I sports, and it is for field hockey. In the America East Conference, all sports teams are in New England, New York, New Jersey, and Maryland, except for field hockey. They have 3 affiliate members. Do you know what state they're in, guys?
California. I don't know.
California.
California.
Cal.
You just think it as far away as you can get, Glenn?
2 of them are Power 5. 2 Power 5 schools have teams in the America East Conference. Cal and Stanford. UC Davis is the other school in California that is in a field hockey conference with teams from New England. So, as crazy as my plan might sound, it isn't really unique. So, this is where I'd love to put West Virginia into the ACC for wrestling because it's a Power 5 school. So, you've got similar resources. Geographically, you're right there. And it adds a 7th team. So, that is probably the hardest thing through all this. Again, I said the Power 5s are going to have to get along. Now, as we've taken a breath, I'm going to get to the immediate issues in a second. Kevin Hazard, your thoughts on what we've got so far?
I think in just one school, and I think it's the one you had the most trouble with. It's West Virginia, and I was looking at it and I thought, I wonder if he considered putting them in PSAC. And I think probably the only reason you didn't was because they're better funded.
Right, because we don't know.
They're
Morgan
right
State's...
there with that. Put them in PSAC and move Mason to the ACC. Geographically it works and academically it works. But
yeah, I stuck with the Power 5 footprint there with West Virginia in the ACC versus a Mason, for example.
Yeah,
because of they're just so much stronger.
Glenn, you've had a chance to look at this a little bit more than Kevin has, so
Yeah, I've had a chance to look at this for the last month, since about a month or two now that you've done it and sent it to me, Jason. I think it's really good that you're being bold here, and we're having this on the Matt Stats show. It's a little bit different approach to our normal shows, but this is something that we need to put in the lap of the decision makers to see what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen with these 81 schools and what the AD and the president might say or the conference or whatever. But I think you've done a lot of legwork here. And I think we need to realize as a sport here that there's some things we need to address could be better off with some changes. And we can't stick with, this is what we always did when I was a kid.
Well, can I add one quick thing? I also like what you did and like making an affiliate to the ACC because they are only 6, and if they may need an affiliate going down the line, and you break that open, and now if there's a situation where one of them drops, now they can go pick up another school, and it's already been done.
I want to go in the other. I want to go in the other direction too with the, with where we're going with. I don't want to think drop. I want to think forward moving. As this gives us the chance to add. So
And one thing,
go ahead.
Let me interject here, guys. We've added 43 college teams to our sport, both men and women combined. 43 in the past school year. That's an astronomical number. I remember when I wrote the book, we had like 24 in a year, and that we thought was off the scale. Mm-hmm. The sport is really growing, with the exception of men's NCAA Division I. And the way we've gotten these teams, is some teams, Bellarmine, Queens, etc., Lindenwood, has moved up a division, which is great. Okay, but if all these other schools are adding wrestling, but men's Division I, NCAA, it's great, Jason, that you're opening the door on this and see what we could do to let's grow Division I wrestling.
So to move on, we've got a little bit more. We're not done yet, by the way, because I'm going to talk about some of the problems. But again, the previous, the biggest issue was what I said was the ACC, and like I mentioned at a hurdle, the P5s working together. So again, too often non-revenue expenses are tied up with the conference moves related to football and basketball. So like again with Old Dominion, well, we're in a conference without wrestling. You did that. Your leadership put I think 6 of their sports out of the CAA that were sponsored into affiliate programs into other divisions. I mean, I think their lacrosse team has been in 4 or 5 different conferences since 2013. It's ridiculous. Now, with the moratorium, again, the Big 12, Pac-12, SEC teams are going to be, I'm sure the SEC wants no part of sanctioning wrestling at this point because OU and Mizzou are not, they're not in there like, okay, you're not going to be our, we're not worried about it. So it's back to the Pac-12 and Big 12. Who's gonna put their name on it? Is it a conference championship? Where's your history? Now it's weird because I'm actually going to lean more Pac-12 on this, and let me tell you why. Pac-12 has been around technically a lot longer than the Big 12, and you're gonna be like, whoa. The Big 8 and the Big 12 technically are not the same thing. They didn't just change the name. They actually, the Big 12 history starts, I want to say in 1996, when it became the Big 12. The Big 8 ceased to exist then, and they created a new conference. So that is probably the worst reason for that. But there's some rationale to it. It's not a great rationale, but there is proof there. The Pac-12 has been around since the old Pac-8 way back in the day. So it's older than the Big 12. It's not older than the Big 8. But the Big 12 has its own history, whereas the Big 8 has its own history. And that is actually, I believe, on their website or Wikipedia page.
Yes, it is.
Something
Jason,
like that.
When you look at like NCAA baseball champions from the Big 12, they don't count anything that happened when they were in the Southwest or the Big 8. It's a completely different show now.
Now we move to our issues. The EIWA outrage, and I'm expecting this one. It's the oldest wrestling conference in the country. How can you just get rid of it? No, I'm not getting rid of it. I'm not making it an automatic qualifier because right now the EIWA basically serves, and you can bring up all the history about how great the Easterns are. I know it's a great tournament. I've been to multiple Eastern championships. I've announced them. I know how good it is, and I'm not trying to take Brian, Kevin's son's announcing gig away from him from getting rid of the EIWAs. So the thing is there is no real structure. They don't really set a conference schedule. Some schools could wrestle 3 conference duels, whereas the Ivy's going to wrestle their other 5 teams, and maybe, they're going to wrestle an Army and a Navy. There is no real rhyme or reason how they schedule. So, when you put conference standings together, you're like, well, this team's wrestled 12 dual meets in conference because they're all close, and this team's wrestled 3. Or like I think F&M was like undefeated in the EIWA this year until they wrestled Hofstra the last duel of the year. And it was like, Could F&M been in like 5-0 in conference and like been in first place in the EIWA and not wrestle anybody that was in that top half? So let's think about this logically. You can still have the EIWA. You can still have the Eastern Championships. You're just think about putting it as another elite Eastern tournament. Think outside of the box. Put it in January or something where it's like, okay, now you've got guys that want to you can have guys that aren't necessarily maybe your starters wrestling in Eastern Championships. I'm just thinking about all the guys that Cornell used to have, and every team's like this, but a guy like Joe Stanzione, for example, was like he was really good. He just couldn't break the starting lineup, but he was beating nationally ranked guys. He'd probably been ranked for any other team in the country. But okay, well, your starter gets break. Stanzione can wrestle in the Easterns and be part of that legacy. And there you go. You can have it, and it's not, I'm saying not making it a backup tournament. Let's clear that. That's not what I'm saying. But you can have a good tournament with those 17 teams. It's going to help your RPI. It's going to help those smaller schools get the good matches. It's going to give you a good tournament where you don't have to break the budget to go. You can have your history. You can have the same people working it. But you make it instead of a Midlands or a Vegas or a Scuffle, you've created another Eastern tournament that is got tradition and history, and people will go. Your Lehigh fans will go. Your Navy fans, because it's the Easterns. Now, it's not going to qualify you for the Nationals. That may take a little bit of the shine off of it, but it's not going to break up the history of the EIWA. Everything can stay the same with the exception of the qualifier. And guess what you're going to see at the National Championships? Probably going to see more teams from that EIWA qualify for the tournament through my particular projection than you would the old way. So That's what I think the solution is for the EIWA problem. Is you're not going to, the conference will still exist, but there's sometimes it wasn't even an automatic qualifier until the late 60s when we went to qualifiers. So let's not get all crazy about it being 1908. It was not a qualifier longer than it's been a qualifier, or it's really close.
Yeah,
So
close
just think about that for a second. Just don't poo-poo the idea because I'm making this awesome conference not qualifier anymore. Well, I'm giving you 3 to 4 options now to where these teams, your teams, are going to be able to get guys to nationals. You're going to be able to spend a good. You can go to 2 good tournaments now. You can go to that cool the Easterns in January or in December, wherever you want to put the Eastern Championships. It's just not going to be the qualifier. And I think this is the one that I struggle with the most because I like tradition, but at the same point, we can't just be traditionalist to be traditionalist. And, the bottom half of that conference, a lot of them are treading water. Like, okay, well, we're great. This is our access point to nationals. And what's the goal? Steal a bid? Have one great guy, and if he has a bad weekend, you hope he gets an at-large. I feel like this is better for every school, not just the little schools. I feel like this is better for every single school in the country because it puts you in a situation where the good teams are still going to get their good teams through, and the mid-level and the lower teams are going to have a better chance at being competitive. You're in a conference, getting beat 48-3. Or do you want to be in it may be a sloppy dual meet, whatever. If it may be, but it's going to be fun. You're going to have a chance to be in a 24-23 dual meet. It's better than getting beat 49-3. But we had Penn State come in and versus we had that barn burner with Hofstra last week. I mean, just the fans that you want to get into the building don't really necessarily always care about the ranking. The good, I'm going to come see number 1. Yeah. But if you've got a competitive, fun atmosphere with like schools that are regional, and I know, all these kids that we went to, we battle against, you talk trash to them at the bar because, yeah, I go to so-and-so. Oh, yeah, you went to there because I'd go up to William and Mary all the time and I'd heckle the crap out of them. Although, I mean, their SAT scores were much higher, but I'd razz them for not getting to an Ivy League school. It's like that. People you're regionally working with them. You don't talk trash to somebody from North Texas at your job because it's just. I feel like the sports part of this is also a benefit in the fans. Now that's a really really minor issue.
Let me support what you said there, Jason. 1 second. When I was first at William Mary, we were 1A in football, and we went 1AA. In the early 80s. And I remember a lot of the old timers, a lot of the old football players saying it's the worst decision ever made, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? We drew way more fans being 1AA, being competitive, making the 1AA semifinals a couple times, instead of being 1A and getting our butts whooped. So there's really some of these conferences can be good because when you get some of these schools in a conference trying to match the endowments of the Ivies or the federal budget of the 2 academies, it's impossible. So it could be something that could actually help out. Anyway, go ahead, Jason. I just wanted to support yours with an analogy there.
Yeah. So again, the key here is addition, not contraction. More conferences means more competitive duels,
Correct.
More competitive conference tournaments, for more teams and access to the championship at a more equitable rate. The underfunded mid-major has more incentive to recruit against like institutions, knowing they have a more realistic chance to qualify for nationals by winning a smaller conference. Scheduling flexibility will be greater as teams are no longer avoiding events like the Virginia Duels. When we schedule that thing, we have to make sure teams from the same conference aren't against each other because they're gonna hit each other later in the year. Well, there's more conferences. At one point, I think when I started working, we had 12 conferences. Now we're down to 7. So we get back to that. We avoid this, the excuses in scheduling. The potential for growth. Now, this will be a future topic, but this is something that I'm really think has a real benefit, and it's not the reason to do it, but it's a byproduct of it, is looking at conference sponsorship now. Schools that are looking to add sports, so they have a benefactor or a donor or somebody, or Maura gets them on the phone and starts talking to them about trying to add wrestling, and there's, our conference doesn't have it. Well, the Big South creates this little scheduling thing. Okay, then those Big South schools, Charleston Southern, High Point, Longwood, Radford, UNC Asheville, South Carolina Upstate, Winthrop, opportunities for wrestling. Ohio Valley, Eastern Illinois, which has had a team, Morehead State, Southeast Missouri State, Tennessee Tech, Tennessee Martin. Look at where the NAIA is growing. in the areas where those schools are at, they would have probably very little problem with getting students there. So then, okay, we have a conference. Plus, we could add you could be one of the first conferences to add women's wrestling, because we're going to see men's and women's being added when we're going to see them added. It's what's going to happen. The Colonial could get back to it. College of Charleston, Delaware, Elon, Northeastern, Towson, UNC Wilmington, William and Mary. The Patriot League. Boston U had a team before they joined the Patriot League. They could have been a league. Colgate, Holy Cross, Lafayette, Loyola. These are options. The Northeast, again, I mentioned what I loved about this. Fairleigh Dickinson, both St. Francis's. Central Connecticut State, Merrimack, Wagner. Some of these teams you've heard have had wrestling before, but now there would be a conference for them to potentially, just one step closer to potentially having the sport back at their schools. So that's where that goes. Another thing that's also forthcoming is the HBCU Wrestling Initiative. We've talked about Morgan State, and in case you were unaware, that is a historically black college and university. It's an HBCU. There are plans, I believe, to add up to, if not more, 6 HBCU wrestling programs. That is only going to supplement these conferences, because we're again worried about having 6 and if we drop below that, we can't qualify. Well, I don't know if the MEAC is going to be in existence much longer. Their members are getting poached. Where North Carolina A&T, Hampton, they used to be in the MEAC. Now they're in the CAA. I mean, Howard is being rumored to move. I mean, it's just, you've had Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M go from the MEAC to the SWAC. So we don't know the HBCU landscape yet, but that's a potential with 6 potential new ads or 5 when Morgan State comes on board. And then the SWAC, I believe that the SWAC has never had a team school with wrestling. I could be wrong there, but basically, if my research tells me, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, which is your Gramblings, your Southerns, your Alabama States, in that region of the country, those HBCUs haven't had wrestling. So the options with the HBCU model, I believe it's really wide open. Now on screen, here's the old model meets the new model. We got 7. Now we'll have 11 conferences. So then you'll have auto bids. Say if you've got your auto bids at your 11 conferences. Right now you got 70 auto bids based on just a conference championship alone. This is before you even get to the allocation discussion. So your automatic qualifiers, your conference champion is always going to get your bid in an AQ conference of 6 or more. We did not see that in the Big 12 that one year. They were at the 4. But if you've got 6, you've got an AQ conference, you're going to get your champion. So right there's 110 wrestlers into the show, leaving just 220 to determine how they're going to figure out that wild card or at-large situation. So we've got, and I'm not even getting to where this could lead to potential dual meet championships down the line. So future issues as a result, as we're going to wrap up here soon. Again, the pre-allocation structure may have to change. I just talked about the AQs, and of course the Big Ten dominance isn't addressed here, but that is not the intent. The Big Ten is its own conference with 14 member institutions. It's the only one in the country at Division I level with it. Not really a factor in this discussion. Before we finish up, the immediate hurdles as a result, again, the ACC doesn't have the affiliate members. We've talked about them, one of 5 schools. In case you're wondering, it's the Ivy League, the ACC, the SEC, the SWAC, and the Horizon League do not have affiliates of the 32 conferences. Men's sports, of those 32 conferences, 23 have affiliates. And again, wrestling has affiliates in the Big 12, MAC, Pac-12, and Southern Conference already. The Western part of this scenario and the Power 5 scenario and the PSAC are probably my biggest hurdles, the things that I was just the hardest for me to figure out, because it's not an easy solution. These are what is it, round holes and square pegs. But maybe if we can just make them ovals, shave some edges, and make them a little bit more functional, I think just at least getting the conversation. And I'm going to point this out. At the convention that year I talked to about the qualifying situation, it wasn't just one suggestion that came out. It was a suggestion about, hey, well, what about if we do this? The idea was planted, and then we grew from that idea. Perhaps something can grow from this. I'm not saying this is the answer, but I think this is potentially an outside-of-the-box way of thinking and looking at the rest of the sports landscape. And so we can kind of dictate our future when we don't really have the keys to the car, but we can maybe have the roadmap out and kind of say, hey, you might want to go this way instead of not just sitting in the back not knowing where we're going. So to use a dad joke reference, because we're going to be traveling with our kids here soon. So those are the biggest things I see with it. So I've made sure that we've got problems. We've addressed the problems. I've addressed some solutions. Now those solutions have their future problems. But I feel like if we just think about it a little differently, and we can maybe get the opportunity to add conferences and eliminate the reason, the rationale to try to cut teams. Because if a president or an AD wants to cut a sport, they're going to find a way to cut a sport. They're going to hire their own consultant and tell them the questions to put into their bid and say, hey, here's why we need to cut this. Sometimes that's unavoidable. But if we can come at them with reasons, say, well, that's BS. We can do that with everybody. But if we give them one less reason, and then we give schools more reasons and enticement, one less reason to say no, I think this could be a winning solution in some way, shape, or form. So I'm going to open it up to questions. First thing, if you're listening out there, I want you to ask questions because I don't have all the answers. I haven't flushed this entire thing out completely, but maybe you've got something I haven't thought of, or maybe I haven't. I just didn't have time to talk about it here on the Madstat Show. First, I'm at Jason M. Bryant at jason@bryantwrestling.com. That's how you can get a hold of me to talk about this. Now, I want to open it up to Glenn and Kevin here as we've got the time remaining here in our show. What questions do you have about this that maybe we didn't touch on that we could address?
The first thing I'd like to address on that, Jason, since you brought up the feedback thing, both Jason and I are going to be at the convention in July, and I'm going there to, first of all, to help out the sport in any way I can, and also to hear from coaches and administrators and anybody who might have feedback on not just Jason's idea here, but on any topic they want to hear about on Matstats that we can help grow the sport. Okay, do that. So that's the reason I'm heading down to Florida and for the July show on that. So I really like this, Jason. We're an old boys sport that really, we were the last sport to include women on the planet. Well, except for football, of course. We were the last Olympic sport to include women. So we really don't get to change very easily. Okay, so we're like a salmon swimming upstream here. But I think this is something that the time is right for right now with all the changes going on and the good changes going on in wrestling. Okay. There were no women wrestling 10, 15 years ago, guys. And that has really been instrumental in saving the sport and changing the direction.
Well, actually, that's how long we've been. There has been women's wrestling 10, 15 years ago. It was when we had this discussion in 1999. It was 1999, 2000, before we added 300 teams. Yeah. There weren't women wrestling in the 80s at the college level. Now we've got them. Yeah. It started the first from Minnesota Morris 1993, 94.
Sure. I was on. Sorry.
Yeah. But the thing is, we're so used to saying 10, 15 years ago for 20 years. We can't say 10, 15 years ago. Now we're
I'm so old, there's no difference between 10 and 20 years. When as old as Hazard and I are. But anyway, guys, so that's what I'm opening up, just like Jason's saying here, for some feedback. I really think it's a perfect time right now for change with all the change that's happened in this sport. And I think this can help grow the one lagging section of the sport, which is NCAA Division I men, has shrunk. Okay, and it's hit the nadir and it's starting to go back up. And I think Jason has some good ideas on this. Kevin, what do you have to say?
I tell you what really it strikes me when you take it out and you move it to a conference level. Your point about that school in Norfolk being able to drop because they wasn't in the conference, I think that goes a long way. And it's in conferences that. I'm looking at ACC. There were a number of schools in the ACC that had really big programs and really good programs. And I don't know, maybe you can bring those back. That's a place for growth. My question is looking at it, and it's one of the hurdles. Who's the biggest person we have to convince? I mean,
I'm curious. I guess my question to that question is with a question, and I'm curious, like, what's it cost a conference to sponsor a sport? Well, I mean, yeah, it's going to cost them if you're going to run a championship. Yeah, there's cost there, but you can make money on you can make that championship make money. I mean, you can make money on a wrestling event if you market it just right. But it's like, what's the harm? Like, what do you lose? Oh, we don't have the money. Well, do you know how much it costs? My question is it the conference commissioner? Is it the university presidents? Yeah. So who do you ask? Who is that person, Kevin? But So
Yeah.
who is going to, what's it going to take? Say, hey, Ohio Valley and Big South, you did this football thing. What's to stop you from doing it in wrestling? And you're going to get a lot of I don't knows. So this is where I think we need to come to the table. If we can come up with it,
With
okay,
a plan.
maybe the next step of this renovation plan is, okay, what's it going to take to get the Northeast Conference or the CAA to run a tournament? Where would you put it? Who would be in it? How would you make money? That's the thing. How would you make that particular school or that particular conference money? Would it be brought in on who's their streaming partner? Is it ESPN Plus? Would ESPN Plus pick up more sponsorship or money? I don't know exactly how the streaming partnership works and what the non-revenue Olympic sports do in terms of enticing these conferences from being on there. But I just think that this is the start. And okay, now we have 11 conference tournaments to run versus 7. Now, this is also now the enticement. So guess what we're going to need now? We're going to need more officials. Guess what? We're going to need more people to get back into the sport. So I feel like this could open the door to a lot of byproducts that we haven't really discussed in terms of that. We're just talking about sponsorship. But who is that person? Is it the president? Is it the conference? Is it your number one athletic booster? Is it something that, is there some, I don't know. That's I don't want to say the $64,000 question because that shows a lot older than the $100,000 pyramid. But just that's an old joke in case you're wondering where I'm getting it. It's who is the question? That's a great question. I don't have an answer to it, but we need to find that person. Is it at the conference? Is it at the school? And I subscribe to D1 Ticker and D2 Ticker, all the emails. The amount of university ADs that are swapping every day. I'm going to probably get 4 emails a day about a new AD somewhere. We got over 1,000 schools just at the NCAA level alone.
Yeah.
That could potentially have the sport. So who is that person? That's a great question that I don't yet have an answer to.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting one. It was, but that's where this has got to evolve to, because it's a great thing and a great idea. Great ideas have to be implemented.
Further things as far as my renovation goes, because Glenn and I had similar ideas on show topics here, but I'm just going to give you a long path on where we're going here. So for me, this was going to be a short time show, but now it's just Matt Stats that's worked out. Next, I'm curious about dual meet scoring. Then I'm curious about how we can use this conference model, and boom, can we have now we have automatic qualifiers for a dual meet championship potentially. What are we going to do about then we want to get to 100 D1 schools. Then we take this model. Where are our next additions? And just giving you a little. I've touched on a little bit of them, but say the Ohio Valley and the Big South. Well, Morehead State, High Point, Longwood, all those schools. But then if we look at the Big West and the WAC and such, then you could add Northridge, Long Beach State, bring Cal Davis back, Irvine, Riverside, UC San Diego, UC Santa Barbara. Those type of schools. I've got another list of how many schools that don't have football that could add wrestling. So there's so many different ways to renovate as my series. I don't know how many parts it's going to be, but this is part of the renovation of college wrestling in Division I level, part 1. So where we go from here, I don't know, but a lot of it will start with this particular model and moving forward. So that's all I particularly have for this particular episode of Matt Stats. So gentlemen, leave it up to you to close it out, whatever you want to say, and we can end there.
Go ahead, Kevin. You say something, then I'll close up.
I was looking at you. I had that question.
Well, then I'll close up, Kevin. Guys, this was a great new topic to do. Like we said, we'll see you guys at the convention in July. The topic is going to be something about scoring, whether individual bouts or team bouts. The July episode. But as for Matt Stats with my co-host Jason Bryant and Kevin Hazard, I'm Glenn Gormley. And thanks for helping out.